So that's vision. Then we come to the sense of proprioception, which you probably never heard of, but this is my favorite sense of the body. So when I studied for my dissertation, and I like to think of it as the sixth sense. A lot of times it gets grouped in with touch. That's really not appropriate because they use different receptors and they're a different mechanism, and they're really just a different sense in general. So proprioception, I like to think of as the GPS of your body. So it tells you where your limbs are in relation to the rest of your body. And so if you think about proprioception like GPS, all right, so if we're going to type in directions, I need to know how to get from Spec to Walker Conference Center. The first thing I do when I type in those directions is put in where I am and where I'm going. And the where I am is the sense of proprioception. It tells me my starting place. And normally you would use vision to determine the end place, right? So if I want to, in the first thing in the morning, I'm going to get my coffee, then knowing where the coffee cups are, I use vision to see them on the shelf, and then my proprioception tells me where my arm is. So let's just say that my shoulder's in neutral, my elbow's extended so that my hand rests down beside me. So I use that starting information to decide the path, the movement path to get to the cup. And so just like GPS tells us our starting place to be able to determine the path to get there, our proprioception tells where our limbs, our starting place is, so that our brain can calculate the correct movement path. And also like GPS, so sometimes if you miss your turn, then you can hear your GPS yelling at you, please turn around, or it says rerouting and gives you a whole new route if you miss it too bad enough. In some slow types of movement, proprioception can actually give you online processing during movement to make small corrections. So you can think about that as I go to grasp the cup, as I'm approaching the cup, it can give me some small, tiny corrections to make my movement, to make my grasp more precise. So the main thing is telling me the position of my limbs and where they are in relation to each other. The receptors for proprioception, there's four main ones that we talk about: the Golgi tendon organ, muscle spindles, joint receptors, and the vestibular apparatus. The muscle spindle is known as the primary receptor for proprioception. It gives us the most information. It's located inside the muscle itself. So it's mixed in with all of your muscle fibers. The muscle fibers are what are actually contracting to produce movement. And remember that the muscle contracts, it gets shorter when you have a contraction, and it gets longer when you extend the joint. And so as the muscle is changing size with those contractions and relaxations, the muscle spindle is signaling up the spinal cord to your brain those changes in muscle length. And so that information, you're able to determine the position of the joint. And when you're looking at all the muscle spindles of all the body, you can put that information together to decide your actual full configuration. Okay, so then your Golgi tendon organs are located at the junction between the muscle and its tendon. So as the muscle and tendon connects, the Golgi tendon organ lays perpendicular across that junction, and so it detects the tension of the muscle and tendon. So it's really for a force sensor. And joint receptors are located in the capsule of the joint, so in your synovial joints, and they detect the end of the range, so they're preventing hyperextension, hyperflexion, those kinds of things. They're almost like a pain receptor at that point, like it needs to stop. Something bad's going to happen if you continue this movement. The vestibular apparatus is located in the inner ear, and using gravity, it tells you the position of your head relative to the ground. You're able to use all that information to decide your position of your limbs and your body in general. So then you can use proprioception in the stretch reflex. So thinking about stretch reflex is, you know, you go to the doctor and they hit you on the knee and you kick them in the face, right? That's a reflex. Okay, and so that is a response of your muscle spindle. So this is showing the reflex where you hit them on the elbow with the little hammer. And so the muscle spindle responds to the hitting of the hammer. And so it sends signal up to the spinal cord, says, hey, I got hit, which when you hit with the hammer, the tendon extends. So that's the signal that it's getting. It's got a small, short, rapid stretch of the muscle. And I didn't want to. And so the spinal cord sends it back and said, you punk, you better contract and hit them back. And so sends a signal back to the muscle to contract to reverse that movement. And that jerky, reflexive movement is what makes it seem like you're kicking the doctor when you do it at the knee. So we talked about how vision is important for movement. So would proprioception be very important for movement?